Your bank account is stuck. Same number, different month. What if the problem isn't income, it's grip? Most people hoard money hoping it multiplies. It doesn't, it stagnates. Circulation creates wealth, not accumulation. What if every dollar you spend is actually an investment? What if saving kills momentum? The wealthy don't save their way to riches. They spend strategically. They let go intentionally. This audiobook will rewire how you see money. Not as something to protect, but as something to deploy. Let's start with something uncomfortable. Right now, take a breath with me. Deep inhale through your nose for 4 counts. Hold it for 4. Now exhale slowly through your mouth for 6 counts. Do that one more time. As you breathe out, I want you to release whatever shame or anxiety you feel about money, just for now, just for this moment. We're going to rebuild everything from the ground up, and you can't do that while holding tension in your chest. The scarcity trap is where most people live their entire financial lives. It's not your fault. You were trained for it, conditioned, programmed from childhood to believe that money is scarce, that there's never enough, that the responsible thing to do is to grip it tight and never let go. Your parents probably did it. Their parents definitely did it. Somewhere in your family history, someone experienced real deprivation, real poverty, real hunger, and the lesson that got passed down through generations was simple. Hold on to every penny, because you never know when the next one is coming. But here's what nobody tells you. That mindset, that fear-based relationship with money, is precisely what keeps you broke, not poor. Broke. There's a difference. Poor is a lack of resources. Broke is a lack of flow. You can make $60,000 a year and be broke. You can make $200,000 a year and be broke. Because being broke isn't about the numbers in your account. It's about what you do with them. Think about water for a moment. If you have a bucket of water and you seal it tight, what happens over time? It becomes stagnant. Bacteria grows. It becomes undrinkable, unusable, toxic. But if you have that same bucket and you let water flow through it constantly, fresh water in, used water out, it stays clean. It stays useful. It sustains life. Money is exactly the same. The moment you trap it, the moment you seal it away in an account you're too afraid to touch, it begins to die. Not literally, but functionally. Inflation eats it at 2 to 3% per year. Opportunity cost destroys it even faster. While you're sitting on $10,000 in a savings account earning 0.5% interest, someone else is taking that same $10,000 and turning it into 15, then 20, then 50. Let me tell you about 2 people I know. We'll call them Sarah and Michael. Both of them graduated college in the same year, with the same degree in marketing. Both got entry-level jobs at different companies making $45,000 per year. Both were diligent, hardworking, and financially conscious. 10 years later, Sarah has about $38,000 in savings and still makes roughly $62,000 per year. Michael has a net worth of $420,000 and makes $180,000 per year. Same starting point, wildly different outcomes. What happened? Sarah saved. Michael invested. That's the entire story. Every bonus Sarah received went into her savings account. She felt virtuous about it, responsible, safe. She had an emergency fund that could cover 8 months of expenses. She never carried credit card debt. She drove a used Toyota that she bought with cash. She packed lunches. She canceled subscriptions. She did everything the traditional financial advice told her to do. And she stayed stuck. Because while she was busy protecting her money, Michael was busy deploying his. When Michael got his first $1,000 bonus, he didn't save it. He spent it on a weekend marketing conference in Austin. At that conference, he met someone who introduced him to someone else who eventually hired him at a new company for $20,000 more per year. When he got his next bonus, he hired a career coach for 3 months at $200 per session. That coach helped him negotiate his next job offer up by $15,000. When he had saved $10,000, he didn't let it sit in a savings account. He put $5,000 into an index fund and used the other $5,000 to take an online course in data analytics, which made him more valuable at work. Then he started a side consulting practice. He spent money on a website, on business cards, on taking potential clients to coffee. That side practice grew to $20,000 per year in income. Then 40, then 60. He reinvested most of it back into the business. He hired a virtual assistant to handle admin work so he could focus on client acquisition. He spent money on Facebook ads. He attended more conferences. He joined a mastermind that cost $5,000 per year. Every dollar he spent was a seed, and seeds planted in good soil multiply. Sarah's dollars sat in a vault. Michael's dollars went to work. After 10 years, Sarah felt responsible but frustrated. Michael felt alive and abundant. The difference wasn't intelligence. It wasn't luck. It wasn't even income, at least not at first. The difference was philosophy. Sarah believed money was something to protect. Michael believed money was something to deploy. Now, here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. I'm not saying you should be reckless. I'm not saying you should spend every dollar you have on random things and hope for the best. That's not circulation. That's chaos. What I'm saying is that there's a fundamental difference between spending and investing, and most people have been taught to confuse the two. When you buy a new TV because you're bored, that's spending. When you buy a microphone and camera to start a YouTube channel that could eventually generate income, that's investing. When you go out to eat because you don't feel like cooking, that's spending. When you take a potential client or mentor to lunch, that's investing. The transaction might look the same on your credit card statement, but the outcomes couldn't be more different. The velocity principle is the single most important concept in this entire audiobook. Money multiplies through movement. Let me say that again because it contradicts everything you've been taught. Money multiplies through movement, not through storage, not through protection, not through sitting in a savings account earning less interest than inflation costs you. Through movement. This is not opinion. This is mathematical reality. In economics, there's a term called the velocity of money. It measures how many times a single dollar circulates through an economy in a given period. The higher the velocity, the healthier the economy. When people spend money, that money becomes someone else's income, which they spend, which becomes someone else's income, and so on. The GDP of an entire nation depends on money changing hands rapidly and frequently. Your personal economy works the same way. When you let money sit, it creates zero velocity. It generates nothing. But when you spend it strategically, it creates returns that come back to you multiplied. The key word there is strategically. I'm not advocating mindless consumption. I'm advocating intentional deployment. Every time money leaves your hand, you should be able to answer one question: what is this going to return to me? If the answer is nothing or just temporary pleasure, that's a red flag. Not that you can never spend money on pleasure. You're human. But if most of your money falls into that category, you're in the scarcity trap. Let me take you through a typical day for someone operating under the old paradigm versus someone operating under the new one. It's a Wednesday morning. Both people wake up at 6:30. The scarcity-minded person, let's call him David, makes coffee at home because buying it would waste $4. He spends 45 minutes preparing breakfast and lunch to avoid spending money during the day. He leaves for work at 7:45 in his 12-year-old sedan that he refuses to replace even though it needs constant repairs because buying a new car would mean taking on debt. He gets to work and spends 8 hours doing a job he's decent at but doesn't love. He packs his own lunch, sits at his desk, and eats while scrolling social media. He doesn't attend the optional professional development lunch workshop because it costs $25. After work, he goes straight home, makes dinner, watches Netflix on the subscription he keeps because it's cheaper than going out, and goes to bed. His day cost him maybe $12. He feels good about that. He's being responsible. Now here's the abundance-minded person. We'll call her Jessica. She wakes up at 6:30 and immediately spends 15 minutes on a guided meditation app that costs $10 per month. She considers this an investment in mental clarity and decision-making. She doesn't make coffee. She stops at a local coffee shop on the way to work and spends $5, but while she's there, she has a conversation with another regular customer who mentions he's looking for someone with her exact skill set for a freelance project. She gives him her card. During lunch, she spends $25 to attend the professional development workshop, where she learns a new strategy she can implement in her work and meets 2 people who eventually become collaborators. After work, she spends an hour at a co-working space that costs $99 per month instead of working from home because the environment helps her focus on her side business. She grabs dinner with a friend who's in a similar industry, and they trade ideas. Quadrant 3 is appreciating investments. This is money spent on things that increase in value over time. A home in a growing market, index funds, stocks in solid companies, retirement accounts, collectibles with proven appreciation curves. These are good. These are what traditional financial advice focuses on. But here's the limit of Quadrant 3. It's passive. You put money in and you wait. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not enough to create rapid wealth transformation. Quadrant 4 is where the magic happens. Multiplying investments. This is money spent on things that actively generate more money. Skills training that increases your earning power. Business equipment that lets you take on more clients. Marketing that brings customers to your door. Networking events that create partnerships. Health and fitness that increase your energy and cognitive function so you can work at a higher level. Education that opens entirely new career paths. This quadrant is the engine of wealth. The wealthy live here. They don't ignore quadrant 3, but they prioritize quadrant 4 because the returns are exponential, not linear. Take a moment right now and think about your last 5 significant purchases. Not the coffee and gas station snacks, but the real purchases. The things over $100? Which quadrant did each one fall into? Be honest, don't justify. Just observe. If most of them are in quadrants 1 and 2, you're in the scarcity trap. You're spending to maintain, not to grow. And that's exactly why your bank account looks the same month after month. Here's a scenario I want you to imagine with me. You have $5,000 sitting in your checking account. You've worked hard for it, you've sacrificed for it, and now you're at a crossroads. You could put it in a high-yield savings account where it will earn maybe 2% per year, which is $100. In 10 years, with compound interest, it might grow to about $6,000. That feels safe. That feels responsible. Or you could take that $5,000 and enroll in a certification program that teaches you a high-demand skill. Let's say it's data science or project management or digital marketing. The program takes 3 months of evenings and weekends. It's intense. It's uncomfortable. But at the end, you have a credential that makes you more valuable in the marketplace. Suddenly, you're not just an employee. You're a specialist. Companies pay specialists more. You negotiate a $10,000 raise at your current job, or you land a new job at a $20,000 increase. In year 1 alone, you've doubled your investment. In 10 years, that decision compounds to an extra $200,000 in lifetime earnings, not even counting the future opportunities that skill opens up. $5,000 in a savings account becomes $6,000 in 10 years. $5,000 in yourself becomes $200,000 in 10 years. Same amount of money. Completely different philosophy. One is about protection, one is about production. Which one feels scarier to you? And more importantly, why does the higher return option feel scarier? That's the scarcity trap talking. It's convincing you that the safe choice is actually safe, when in reality, it's the most dangerous choice you can make. Because the cost of inaction is always higher than the cost of action. You just don't see it on a balance sheet. Now I want to address the elephant in the room. You might be thinking, this all sounds great, but I barely have enough to cover my bills. I don't have $5,000 lying around to invest in a course. I don't have $60 a day to spend on networking and workshops. I'm in survival mode. I hear you. I've been there. And here's the truth. You can't skip levels. If you're genuinely in survival mode, where you're making minimum wage and choosing between rent and food, then yes, your first priority is stability. Get to a place where your basic needs are met. But here's what I've observed over years of working with people in all financial situations. Most people who say they can't afford to invest in themselves are actually saying they're afraid to. They do have the money. It's just allocated to things in quadrants 1 and 2. The Netflix subscription, the car that's nicer than they need, the apartment that's bigger than necessary, the dinners out that don't create value, the clothes they don't wear. I'm not saying live like a monk. I'm saying get ruthlessly honest about what's actually necessary and what's just comfortable. There was a woman I knew who swore she couldn't afford to invest in growing her business. She was making $35,000 a year as a freelance graphic designer and felt stuck. She said she had no money for courses or marketing or tools. But when we sat down and looked at her expenses, she was spending $280 per month on a car payment for a vehicle she barely drove because she worked from home. She was spending $150 per month on subscription services she rarely used. She was spending $300 per month on dining out, not for business purposes, just for convenience. That's $730 per month, almost $9,000 per year. She didn't have a money problem. She had an allocation problem. Within 6 months of redirecting that money into her business, into a website redesign, into Facebook ads, into a part-time assistant, her income had doubled. Within 2 years, she was making over $100,000. The money was always there. She was just spending it in the wrong quadrants. So here's a reflective question for you. If you audited your spending from the last 3 months and categorized every expense into the 4 quadrants, what percentage would land in quadrant 4? If it's less than 20%, you're not investing in your future. You're just maintaining your present. And your present is exactly what you'll have in 5 years unless something changes. Let's talk about income expansion. because this is where people get it backwards. The personal finance industry loves to talk about cutting expenses. Make your own coffee, stop buying avocado toast, cancel subscriptions, drive a cheap car. And yes, eliminating waste is important. But there's a fundamental mathematical limit to cutting expenses. You can only cut them to zero. You can't cut below zero. But income? Income has no ceiling. There is no limit to how much you can earn. So why does 90% of financial advice focus on the thing with a hard limit and ignore the thing with infinite potential? Because cutting expenses is easy to teach and hard to screw up. Anyone can tell you to stop buying lattes. It takes no expertise. But teaching someone how to increase their income requires actual knowledge, actual skill, actual risk. And most financial advisors don't have that knowledge because they've never built a business or negotiated a major raise or created multiple income streams. They've followed a safe corporate path and now they're teaching you to do the same. Stay small, stay safe, stay stuck. I'm going to tell you something that might make you uncomfortable. If you're making $50,000 per year and you've been at that level for more than 2 years, you're underpaid. Not because your employer is evil, not because the economy is broken, but because you haven't invested in becoming more valuable. You're delivering the same level of value you were delivering 2 years ago, so you're getting paid the same amount. The market doesn't reward loyalty or tenure anymore. It rewards value creation. If you want to make more, you have to be worth more. And becoming worth more costs money. I know someone who was stuck at a $58,000 salary for 4 years. He was a good employee, showed up on time, did his work, never caused problems, and never got promoted. He kept waiting for his boss to notice him, to reward his loyalty, to give him the raise he deserved. It never came. Then he spent $2,000 on a 3-day intensive workshop about sales psychology. He learned frameworks for persuasion, negotiation, and communication that he'd never encountered in his job. Within 1 month, he applied those frameworks to a project at work and increased his team's conversion rate by 18%. Within 3 months, his boss promoted him and gave him a $12,000 raise. Within a year, he left that company for a competitor who offered him $90,000. That $2,000 investment returned $45,000 in year 1 alone. That's a 2,200% ROI. Show me a savings account that does that. But here's the key. He had to spend the $2,000 before he saw the return. He had to let go before it came back multiplied. That's the entire premise of this audiobook. Money out, money in. You have to let it go to make it grow. The people who can't do that stay stuck forever. They wait until they have extra money to invest in themselves, but extra never comes. There's always another bill, another emergency, another reason to hold tight. The only way forward is to decide that investing in yourself isn't optional. It's not something you do when you can afford it. It's something you do so that you can afford it. Let's go deeper into the psychology of this. When you spend money on yourself, on your education, on your skills, on your network, you're making a statement. You're declaring to yourself and to the universe that you believe you're worth the investment, that you believe you have the capacity to create returns, that you're not a victim of circumstances but an agent of change. And that internal shift is worth more than the skill you learn or the connection you make. Because once you see yourself as someone who invests rather than someone who merely survives, your entire decision-making process changes. You start to spot opportunities. There's a concept in business called asymmetric risk. It means situations where the potential upside vastly exceeds the potential downside. Imagine you spend $500 to attend a conference. Worst case scenario, you waste a weekend and lose $500. That's the downside. But the upside? You could meet a future business partner. You could get hired for a 6-figure role. You could learn a strategy that transforms your business. You could make a connection that leads to a book deal or a speaking opportunity or a client worth $50,000 per year. The downside is capped at $500. The upside is uncapped. That's asymmetric. And yet most people focus entirely on the $500 risk and ignore the infinite upside. That's scarcity thinking. Abundance thinking focuses on the upside and makes the bet every single time. Now let's talk about risk in a broader sense because this is where people get paralyzed. You've been taught that risk is bad, that taking chances is irresponsible, that the smart thing to do is to play it safe, keep your head down, and avoid uncertainty. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Avoiding risk is the riskiest thing you can do. Let me explain. When you stay in a job you hate because it feels secure, you're taking a massive risk. You're risking your mental health, your growth, your potential, your lifetime earnings. When you refuse to start a side business because you're afraid of failure, you're risking being stuck at your current income level forever. When you don't invest in learning new skills because you're afraid of wasting money, you're risking obsolescence in a rapidly changing economy. The illusion of safety is often the most dangerous place to be. Let me paint you a picture. It's 2008, the economy collapses. Two men lose their jobs on the same day. Both are in their mid-40s with families and mortgages. One of them, let's call him Tom, has spent the last 20 years playing it safe. He climbed the corporate ladder steadily. He saved diligently. He never rocked the boat. He has 6 months of expenses and savings, which feels responsible. But he has no side income, no secondary skills, no network outside his company. When he gets laid off, he's devastated. He starts applying to similar jobs and finds that the market is flooded with people just like him. He's not special. He's replaceable. It takes him 18 months to find a new position, and it pays 20% less than his previous role. His savings are depleted. His confidence is shattered. He never fully recovers financially or psychologically. The other man, let's call him Robert, has spent the last 20 years taking calculated risks. He switched industries 3 times to learn different skills. He started 2 side businesses that didn't work, and one that generated $15,000 per year in passive income. He invested heavily in courses, coaching, and networking. He has less in traditional savings than Tom, but he has more in what I call asymmetric assets: skills, relationships, reputation, and multiple revenue streams. When he gets laid off, he's concerned but not panicked. Within 2 weeks, someone from his network offers him a consulting gig. Within 2 months, he's turned that into a full-time consulting practice, making more than he did at his corporate job. Within a year, he's built that practice to $200,000 in revenue. By the time the economy recovers, he has no interest in going back to corporate work. He's built something better. Same starting point, same crisis, completely different outcomes. Tom played it safe and lost. Robert took risks and won. Now, I'm not saying Robert's path was easy. He had failures. He had stress. He had moments of doubt. But he never had the catastrophic collapse that Tom experienced because he'd built resilience through diversification. And diversification requires investment. You can't build multiple income streams without spending money on the skills and tools to create them. You can't build a strong network without spending money on events and dinners and travel. You can't become anti-fragile without investing in yourself. Here's a breathing exercise I want you to do with me right now. Close your eyes if you're in a safe place to do so, or just soften your gaze. Take a deep breath in through your nose for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As you exhale, I want you to release one fear about money. Just one. Maybe it's the fear of not having enough. Maybe it's the fear of making a wrong decision. Maybe it's the fear of being judged for spending on yourself. Whatever it is, visualize it leaving your body with that breath. Do that 2 more times on your own. Breathe in possibility. Breathe out fear. Now let's talk about the single highest return investment you will ever make: yourself. Specifically, your skills and your knowledge. There's a concept in economics called the education premium. It's the difference in lifetime earnings between people with different levels of education and skill. The data is overwhelming. On average, someone with a bachelor's degree earns about 65% more over their lifetime than someone with just a high school diploma. Someone with a master's degree earns about 20% more than someone with just a bachelor's. But here's where it gets interesting. In the modern economy, formal education is just one path. Skill-based learning, certifications, and self-education often produce better returns in less time with less cost. I watched a friend spend $120,000 on a master's degree in business administration. It took him 2 years, and he came out with an additional $15,000 per year in salary. Good, but not great. That's an 8-year payback period. I watched another friend spend $8,000 on a 6-month coding boot camp. She came out making $70,000 per year in her first junior developer role. Within 3 years, she was making $130,000. That's a return of $120,000 on an $8,000 investment in 3 years. That's a 1,500% ROI. The difference? One was a traditional path that's oversaturated. The other was a high-demand skill with scarce supply. But here's the part that most people miss. The education premium isn't just about the degree or certification. It's about the transformation that happens in your brain. When you learn something new, you don't just gain knowledge. You gain perspective. You start to see opportunities you couldn't see before. You start to make connections between ideas. You become capable of solving problems you previously didn't even know existed. And that's what the market pays for. Not credentials, capability. The credential might get you in the door, but the capability determines how much you earn once you're inside. So the question isn't whether you can afford to invest in education. The question is whether you can afford not to. Every year you spend operating at your current skill level is a year of lost income. If learning a new skill would increase your earning power by $20,000 per year, and you delay learning it for 3 years because you don't want to spend the money, you've just lost $60,000. The education might have cost $5,000. You saved $5,000 and lost $60,000. That's not smart. That's expensive, and it's not just technical skills. Soft skills often have even higher returns. Communication, negotiation, leadership, sales, persuasion. These are force multipliers. They make everything else you do more effective. I know an engineer who was brilliant technically but terrible at communicating his ideas. He was stuck at mid-level his entire career, constantly frustrated that people who were less skilled technically kept getting promoted above him. Then he hired a communication coach for 6 months at $300 per session, $7,200 total. That coach taught him how to structure presentations, how to speak with confidence, how to read a room, how to build rapport with executives. Within 1 year, he was promoted to senior engineer with a $40,000 raise. Within 3 years, he was an engineering director making $220,000. That's a 3,000% return on $7,200. Here's the pattern. Small investments in yourself create disproportionately large returns. A $500 course can change your career trajectory. A $2,000 conference can introduce you to your future business partner. A $10,000 coach can help you build a $1 million business. But you have to be willing to spend the money before you see the outcome. You have to plant the seed before the harvest. And most people can't do it. They wait for proof before they invest. But proof doesn't come until after you invest. That's the paradox. That's the leap of faith. That's the difference between those who stay stuck and those who break through. Let me tell you about mentorship specifically because this is one of the most misunderstood investments. People hear that someone paid $20,000 for a year of coaching and they think that's insane. That's predatory. That's a scam. And sometimes it is. There are plenty of bad coaches charging ridiculous fees. But when you find the right mentor, someone who has already achieved what you want to achieve and can compress your learning curve, the ROI is staggering. Think about it this way. Let's say you want to build a real estate portfolio that generates $50,000 per year in passive income. You could spend 5 years figuring it out on your own through trial and error. You'll make expensive mistakes. You'll buy the wrong properties. You'll overpay. Now, let's talk about something that makes people really uncomfortable: spending money on how you look. There's this cultural narrative that caring about appearance is vain, shallow, superficial. And sure, if you're spending your last dollar on designer clothes to impress strangers at a club, that's probably not a great investment. But let's be honest about how the world works. Your appearance affects how people perceive you, and perception affects opportunity. If you show up to a job interview in a wrinkled shirt and scuffed shoes, you're statistically less likely to get hired than someone in a sharp suit. That's not fair. That's not right. But it's reality. And you can either complain about reality or work within it. I watched a woman I know struggle to get clients for her consulting business. She was brilliant, experienced, and capable. But she was also showing up to meetings in clothes that looked like she'd grabbed them off the floor. Her hair was always messy. She wore no makeup. And before you think I'm being sexist, I'm telling you what her clients later told her when she asked for feedback. They said she didn't look like someone they wanted to trust with their business. It wasn't about beauty. It was about presentation. It signaled a lack of attention to detail. She was furious at first. She thought it was unfair that she was being judged on appearance rather than competence. And she was right. It was unfair. But she had a choice. She could keep being right and keep struggling. Or she could adapt. She spent $2,000 on a new wardrobe, a haircut, and a session with a stylist who taught her how to put together professional outfits. Her client conversion rate tripled in the next 3 months. Same skills, same pitch, different presentation. That $2,000 generated an extra $60,000 in revenue in year 1. Was it fair that she had to do that? No. Was it a smart investment? Absolutely. The world rewards people who look the part, whether we like it or not. And if a small investment in your appearance can open doors that would otherwise stay closed, it's not vanity. It's strategy. The same applies to fitness and health. When you're physically healthy, you have more energy, more focus, more resilience, better decision-making. You sleep better, which improves cognitive function, You handle stress better, which improves performance under pressure. Companies know this, which is why executives have personal trainers and standing desks and healthy catering at meetings. They understand that physical health is a competitive advantage. So when you spend money on a gym membership or a personal trainer or high-quality food, you're not being indulgent. You're investing in the machine that generates all your income. Your body and brain are your most important assets. If you wouldn't skip oil changes on a car you depend on, why would you skimp on maintenance for the body you depend on? Let me give you a concrete example of how health investment pays off. There's a software engineer I know who was making $90,000 per year, but was constantly exhausted. He slept poorly. He ate fast food. He never exercised. His productivity was declining. He was making mistakes at work. He was irritable with colleagues. His performance reviews were getting worse. Then he hired a personal trainer for $300 per month and started meal prepping on Sundays. Within 2 months, his energy levels doubled. He was sleeping through the night. His focus at work improved dramatically. He started completing projects ahead of schedule. 6 months later, he got promoted with a $25,000 raise. His manager specifically cited his increased productivity and positive attitude. That $3,600 in training and better food generated $25,000 in year 1. Plus, he felt better. He had more energy for his family. He was happier. The ROI on health spending is always positive, even when you can't measure it directly in dollars. Let's move to business thinking for people who don't own businesses. This is a reframe that will change everything. You are a business. Right now, whether you realize it or not. Even if you're a W-2 employee working for someone else, you are a business. Your labor is the product. Your skills are the assets. Your time is the inventory. Your employer is your customer. And just like any business, you have revenue, expenses, and profit margin. Most people never think this way. They see themselves as workers, not as enterprises. And that's a massive mistake because it keeps them thinking small. When you think of yourself as a business, you start asking different questions. How can I increase my revenue? How can I decrease my expenses without sacrificing quality? How can I diversify my customer base so I'm not dependent on one source of income? How can I invest in my assets, my skills, so that my product becomes more valuable? These are the questions that entrepreneurs ask every day, and there's no reason you shouldn't ask them too, even if you work for someone else. Because the moment you start thinking like a business owner, you start acting like one. You stop waiting for permission. You stop waiting for your boss to give you a raise. You start creating value that demands higher compensation. Let me walk you through an exercise. Imagine you're the CEO of You Incorporated. Your company provides professional services in your field. Let's say marketing. Last year, your company generated $60,000 in revenue. That's your salary, your cost of goods sold. The direct costs required to deliver your service includes things like commuting, work clothes, lunches, software subscriptions you pay for yourself. Let's say that's $5,000 per year. Your operating expenses include housing, food, utilities, insurance, everything else you need to live. Let's say that's $40,000 per year. So your total expenses are $45,000. Your profit is $15,000. That's a 25% profit margin. Not bad, but not great. Now, as the CEO, you have 2 paths forward. You can cut expenses to increase profit margin, or you can increase revenue, which is more scalable. If you cut expenses by 10%, you save $4,500. Your profit goes to $19,500. If you increase revenue by 10%, you make $6,000 more. Your profit goes to $21,000. Revenue growth wins. But here's where it gets interesting. What if you increased revenue by 50%? What if you went from $60,000 to $90,000? That's an extra $30,000. Even if your expenses went up slightly because you're spending on growth, let's say they go to $50,000, your profit is now $40,000. You've nearly tripled your profit by focusing on revenue growth instead of expense cutting. This is why the wealthy don't obsess over lattes. They obsess over income. The math is just better. So how do you increase revenue when you're an employee? You make yourself more valuable to your current employer and you negotiate. Or you make yourself more valuable to the market and you switch employers. Or you create secondary income streams. The first step is always the same. Invest in your assets, your skills. If you're in marketing and you learn data analytics, you're now more valuable. If you're in sales and you learn how to use AI tools to automate prospecting, you're more efficient, which means you can close more deals, which means you're more valuable. If you're in any field and you learn to communicate better, lead better, and build relationships better, you become indispensable. All of those things require investment. Courses, books, coaching, time. And time is an investment too, because time spent learning is time not spent earning in the short term. But the long-term returns more than compensate. Now let's talk about strategic debt, because this is where I lose some people. You've been taught that debt is bad, that it's irresponsible, that you should never borrow money, and consumer debt on depreciating assets is bad. If you're financing a jet ski or a designer handbag, that's financial self-destruction. But not all debt is created equal. There's a massive difference between debt that finances consumption and debt that finances production. One destroys wealth. One creates it. Think about a mortgage. You borrow $300,000 at 4% interest to buy a house. Over 30 years, you'll pay about $515,000 total, which sounds insane. But here's the thing. If that house appreciates at 3% per year, which is historically conservative, it will be worth $728,000 in 30 years. You paid $515,000 for something now worth $728,000. You made $213,000 in profit. And that's not even counting the fact that you had a place to live that whole time instead of paying rent, which would have cost you even more with zero equity. The debt allowed you to control an appreciating asset with a small down payment. That's leverage. That's smart. Or consider a business loan. You borrow $50,000 at 8% interest to expand your business. You use that money to hire an employee, buy equipment, and invest in marketing. That investment generates $120,000 in additional revenue in year one. Even after paying back the loan with interest, you're up significantly. The debt acted as a springboard. Without it, you'd still be stuck at your previous revenue level, growing slowly. The debt compressed time. It let you have tomorrow's growth today. That's the power of leverage. Let me give you a specific example. Let's say you have $20,000 saved up. You're thinking about buying a car. You could pay cash for a $20,000 used car and own it outright. That feels good, no debt. But that car will depreciate. In 5 years, it'll be worth maybe $10,000. You just lost $10,000 in value. Alternatively, you could finance a $15,000 car at 5% interest, pay $3,000 down, and keep the other $17,000 to invest in an S&P 500 index fund that historically returns about 10% per year. In 5 years, that $17,000 will grow to about $27,000. Your car is worth $7,000. Your investment is worth $27,000. Your net position is $34,000. If you'd paid cash, your net position would be $10,000. Same starting point. $24,000 difference. The only difference is that you were willing to carry debt on the depreciating asset and invest the cash in the appreciating one. Now I know what some of you are thinking. But what if the market crashes? What if I lose my job and can't make the payments? These are valid concerns, and I'm not saying you should be reckless. I'm saying you should be strategic. If you have no emergency fund and no job security, then yes, maybe paying cash for the car is the safer move. But if you have even 3 months of expenses saved and reasonable job stability, the leveraged approach is almost always better mathematically. And here's the deeper point. The fear of what if is often more expensive than the actual worst-case scenario. The worst case is you have to sell the investment to pay off the car loan. You might lose a little bit in the short term. But the best case is you build wealth significantly faster. And in most cases, the best case is far more likely than the worst case. The same principle applies to student loans, by the way. There's a huge movement right now telling people to avoid student loans at all costs. And again, context matters. If you're borrowing $100,000 to get a degree in a field with no job prospects, that's a bad decision. But if you're borrowing $30,000 to get a nursing degree that will result in a $60,000 salary with job security and growth potential, that's a great decision. The loan is an investment in your earning power. The return far exceeds the cost. The problem isn't student loans. The problem is student loans for low-return degrees. That's a strategic failure, not a debt failure. Here's a reflective question I want you to sit with. What would you do if you weren't afraid of debt? Not reckless debt. Strategic debt. Debt used to finance growth. Would you start that business? Would you go back to school? Would you invest in real estate? Would you hire that coach? Most people have dreams they're not pursuing because they're afraid to borrow the money to make them happen. And meanwhile, they're staying stuck in situations that are costing them far more than the debt ever would. The invisible cost of inaction is always higher than the visible cost of strategic debt. Now let's talk about something that sounds completely counterintuitive. Giving money away. This is going to challenge everything you think you know about wealth building. The scarcity mindset says that giving money away makes you poorer. The abundance mindset says that giving money away makes you richer. And before you roll your eyes and think I'm talking about some manifestation nonsense, I'm not. I'm talking about network effects, reputation capital, and reciprocity. These are real economic principles that have measurable impacts on wealth. When you give strategically, you create goodwill. You build a reputation as someone who's generous, who adds value, who thinks beyond themselves. And that reputation opens doors. People want to work with generous people. They want to hire them, partner with them, refer business to them. There's actual research on this. A study by Wharton professor Adam Grant found that givers, people who consistently help others without immediate expectation of return, end up being the most successful people in their fields over the long term. Not because they're being transactional about it, but because their generosity creates a network of people who want to support them in return. I know a consultant who, early in his career, started a practice of introducing people in his network to each other whenever he saw a potential synergy. He didn't ask for anything in return. He just made introductions. Hey, you should meet so-and-so. I think you'd have a lot to talk about. Over the course of 5 years, he probably made 300 introductions. Some led to partnerships. Some led to hires. Some led to friendships. And every single one of those people remembered that he was the one who connected them. When he eventually started his own firm, he had a network of 300 people who felt like they owed him. His business took off immediately because he had a pipeline of referrals and testimonials and word-of-mouth marketing that money couldn't buy. That wasn't luck. That was strategy. He invested in other people, and it came back multiplied. The same principle applies to charitable giving, but with a caveat. Giving to charity because you feel obligated or guilty is not strategic. That's emotional spending. But giving to causes that align with your values and your goals can create unexpected returns. If you're in real estate and you donate to a housing nonprofit, you meet other people in real estate who care about housing. Some of them might become clients or partners. If you're in tech and you sponsor a coding boot camp for underserved communities, you meet other people in tech who care about education. You build a reputation. You build relationships. You build goodwill. None of this is guaranteed to return financially, but it often does. And even when it doesn't, you've contributed to something meaningful, which is its own return. Here's an example that really drives this home. There's a wealthy entrepreneur I know who every year hosts a dinner for 20 people in his industry. He pays for everything. Expensive restaurant, open bar, no business agenda, just good food and good conversation. The dinner costs him about $5,000. Over 10 years, he's spent $50,000 on these dinners. But the relationships he's built through them have led to business partnerships worth millions. One dinner introduced him to an investor who funded his next venture. Another dinner led to a joint venture that generated 7 figures in revenue. The $50,000 he spent was the best marketing money he ever invested. But if you'd told him at the beginning that he should spend $5,000 on a dinner with no guaranteed ROI, he might have hesitated. Thankfully, he didn't. He understood that investing in relationships is always worth it. Now let's talk about automation. Because this is the secret that allows all of this to work without requiring constant willpower. Willpower is a finite resource. You can't rely on it. You can't trust it. If your financial success depends on you remembering to transfer money to savings every month, or remembering to invest every paycheck, or remembering to pay bills on time, you're going to fail. Not because you're weak, because you're human. Humans forget. Humans get busy. Humans make impulsive decisions. The only way to overcome this is to remove the human from the equation. Automate everything. Here's what automation looks like in practice. The day your paycheck hits your account, money automatically moves. 10% goes to your investment account. 5% goes to your education fund. 3% goes to your giving fund. Whatever's left is yours to spend. You never see that first 18%. It's gone before you can think about it. And because you never see it, you don't miss it. You adjust your lifestyle to the 82% that remains. This is called paying yourself first, and it's the single most powerful wealth-building habit you can develop. But it doesn't stop there. Your bills are on autopay. Your credit cards are set to pay in full every month automatically. Your retirement accounts are set to increase contributions by 1% every year without you doing anything. Your investment accounts are set to rebalance quarterly. Everything that can be automated is automated. The result? You spend zero mental energy on financial management, zero decisions, zero temptation to skip a month. The system runs itself. And over years and decades, the compound effect is staggering. I'll give you a real example. I know someone who set up automatic investments of $500 per month into an index fund starting at age 25. She never thought about it, never touched it, never changed it, just let it run for 30 years. By age 55, that account was worth over $700,000. She contributed $180,000 over those 30 years. The market did the rest. But here's the key. If she'd relied on manual investing, she would have stopped during market downturns. She would have skipped months when money was tight. She would have made emotional decisions. The automation removed all of that. It forced discipline, and discipline beats intelligence every single time in wealth building. So here's an action step. Right now, today, before you finish this audiobook, set up one automated system. Just one. Maybe it's $100 per month into a Roth IRA. Maybe it's $50 per month into an education fund. Maybe it's $25 per month to a cause you care about. The amount doesn't matter. The habit does. Once you set it up, you'll forget it exists. And in 10 years, you'll look at the balance and be shocked. That's the power of automation. It turns intentions into outcomes without requiring ongoing. Let me take you through a visualization now. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. I want you to imagine yourself 5 years from today. You followed everything we've talked about in this audiobook. You shifted from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. You started categorizing your spending into the 4 quadrants and ruthlessly eliminated quadrant 1. You invested heavily in quadrant 4, in your skills, your network, your health, your business. You took strategic risks. You said yes to opportunities that scared you. You hired coaches and attended conferences and bought courses. You automated your finances so discipline became effortless. Now 5 years later, what does your life look like? What's your income? Where do you live? What kind of work are you doing? How do you feel when you wake up in the morning? What opportunities are available to you now that weren't before? Sit with that vision for a moment. Feel it. Make it real in your mind. That version of you exists. It's not fantasy. It's potential. And the only thing standing between current you and future you is the decision to start spending money like an investor instead of a saver. Now open your eyes. That vision can be your reality, but only if you act. Not someday. Now. Because here's the brutal truth about time. It's the one resource you can't get back. Every day you wait is a day of compound growth you're losing. Every month you spend in the scarcity trap is a month that future you won't have. The people who transform their financial lives aren't smarter than you. They're not luckier than you. They're just willing to act before they feel ready. They're willing to spend before they see the return. They're willing to let go before they know what's coming back. Let's talk about the transformation, because that's what this is really about. Not money, transformation. Money is just the tool. The real change is internal. It's the shift from fear to confidence, from scarcity to abundance, from waiting for permission to taking ownership. When you start investing in yourself strategically, something fundamental changes in how you see the world. You stop being a victim of circumstances. You stop blaming the economy or your employer or your upbringing for your financial situation. You take radical responsibility. And with that responsibility comes power. I've seen this transformation happen hundreds of times. Someone comes to me stuck. They're making decent money but living paycheck to paycheck. They're frustrated. They're confused. They're working hard and not getting ahead. And the first thing I ask them is, what have you spent on yourself in the last year? Not on entertainment or comfort or stuff. On growth, on skills, on education, on networking, on health. And almost always the answer is nothing. Or close to nothing. They've spent thousands on streaming services and dinners out and new phones, but zero on becoming more valuable. And that's the problem. They're maintaining, not growing, so we build a plan. We identify the highest leverage investment they can make. Maybe it's a course. Maybe it's a coach. Maybe it's attending an event. Maybe it's hiring someone to take work off their plate so they can focus on higher value activities. Whatever it is, it requires letting go of money before seeing results. And that's terrifying at first. They're scared they'll waste the money. Scared they'll fail. Scared they'll look foolish. But they do it anyway. They make the investment, and then something magical happens. Not immediately, not overnight, but within weeks or months, they start to see returns. A new client, a promotion, a side income stream, a partnership. And suddenly they realize this works. Investing in myself actually works. And once they see it work once, they do it again, and it compounds. Within a year, they're unrecognizable. Higher income, more confidence, better opportunities, different peer group. And when I ask them how it happened, they always say the same thing. I just started betting on myself. That's the entire message of this audiobook. Bet on yourself, not recklessly, strategically, but consistently, because the market might crash, employers might downsize, industries might change, but you? Your skills, your knowledge, your network, your reputation, those are assets no one can take from you. They're recession-proof, automation-proof, inflation-proof. The only way those assets lose value is if you stop investing in them. And most people do stop. They get comfortable. They plateau. They coast. And then they wonder why they're stuck. You don't have to be most people. You can be the person who keeps investing, keeps growing, keeps evolving. But it requires a decision, and not a one-time decision. A daily decision. Every time you're faced with a choice between saving and investing, between comfort and growth, between playing it safe and taking a bet on yourself, you have to choose the latter. Not every time. You're human. You need rest. You need pleasure. You need balance. But most of the time, 70% of the time, 80%, enough that the compound effect works in your favor. Here's the thing about compound interest. It works in both directions. If you invest consistently, even small amounts, it compounds into wealth. But if you avoid investing, if you hoard and protect and play it safe, the opportunity cost compounds into regret. 10 years from now, you'll either look back and think, I'm so glad I started investing in myself back then, or you'll think, I wish I'd started 10 years ago. The only difference is what you do today. So let me ask you some final reflective questions. What's one investment you've been avoiding because it feels too expensive? What would your life look like if you made that investment and it paid off? What's the real cost of not making it? Not the dollar cost, the life cost, the opportunity cost, the regret cost. And here's the most important question. Are you willing to let go of money today to create a better tomorrow, or are you going to grip it tight and stay exactly where you are? If you're still with me, you're ready. You wouldn't have listened this far if you weren't. Something in you knows that the way you've been doing things isn't working. Something in you is hungry for change. Trust that instinct. Feed it, nurture it, and most importantly, invest in it. Because that instinct is right. You are capable of more. You are worthy of more. You just have to be willing to spend like it. Now we're going to shift gears. Everything up to this point has been philosophy and mindset. Now we're getting tactical. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is your implementation guide, your playbook, your step-by-step roadmap to transforming your financial life in the next 90 days. And I'm not just going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you how to do it, when to do it, and what to do when you inevitably hit obstacles. Because you will hit obstacles. Everyone does. The difference between people who transform and people who stay stuck is how they respond when things get hard. Here's your 90-day transformation plan. We're breaking this into 3 distinct phases. Month 1 is awareness and audit. Month 2 is elimination and reallocation. Month 3 is acceleration and momentum. Each month has specific daily and weekly actions. Some will feel easy. Some will feel impossible. Do them anyway. The discomfort is the point. Growth lives on the other side of comfort. Month 1 starts on day 1. Today. Not tomorrow. Not Monday. Today. On day 1, you're going to do something simple but powerful. You're going to write down every single expense you make. Every coffee. Every parking fee. Every subscription charge. Every meal. Everything. You're not going to judge it. You're not going to change anything yet. You're just going to observe. Get a small notebook or use a notes app on your phone. Every time money leaves your account, write it down with the amount and the category. Is it quadrant 1, 2, 3, or 4? Just observe. This practice continues every single day for the entire first month. Day 2, you're going to calculate your current net worth. This is assets minus liabilities. List everything you own that has value. Your checking account balance, your savings, your retirement accounts, your car, your home if you own one, any investments. Add it all up, then list everything you owe. Credit card debt, student loans, car loans, mortgage, medical bills. Add that up. Subtract liabilities from assets. That's your net worth. For many people, this number is negative or close to 0. That's okay. This is your starting point. You can't improve what you don't measure. Write this number down somewhere you'll see it. This is day 1 of your transformation. 90 days from now, this number will be different. Day 3 is when you set up your first automation. Just one. If you don't have any automated investments yet, set up an automatic transfer of whatever amount feels slightly uncomfortable. If $50 per month feels easy, do $75. If $100 feels easy, do $150. The goal is to stretch just beyond your comfort zone. Set this up to transfer on the day after each paycheck hits your account. Into a Roth IRA if you're eligible. Into a taxable investment account if you're not. Into an S&P 500 index fund. Simple, boring, effective. Once you set this up, Don't touch it for 90 days. Let it run. Day 4, you're going to do a subscription audit. Log into your bank account and credit card statements. Look at the last 3 months of recurring charges, streaming services, apps, gym memberships you don't use, software subscriptions, magazine subscriptions, anything that charges you automatically every month. Write them all down with the monthly cost. Then ask yourself, does this serve my growth? Does this help me make money, save time, or become more valuable? If the answer is no, week 2 begins with day 8. Today you're going to do a skill inventory. List every skill you currently have that generates income. Be specific. If you're in sales, maybe you're good at cold calling, relationship building, and closing deals. If you're a designer, maybe you're good at Photoshop, client communication, and project management. Write them all down. Then rate each skill on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 means you're a beginner. 10 means you're world class. Be honest. Most of your skills will probably be in the 5 to 7 range. That's normal. Now look at that list and ask, which skill, if I improved it by 2 points, would have the biggest impact on my income? Circle that skill. That's your focus for the next 90 days. Day 9, you're going to research how to improve that skill. Google it. Find courses. Find books. Find coaches. Find YouTube channels. Find podcasts. Find communities. Spend an hour just exploring what's available. Don't buy anything yet. Just gather information. You're building your roadmap. By the end of this hour, you should have identified 3 to 5 resources that could help you level up this skill. Write them down with their costs. Day 10 is decision day. Look at the resources you identified yesterday. Pick one, not 3. 1. The one that feels most aligned with how you learn and what you need. Maybe it's a $300 online course. Maybe it's a $2,000 live workshop. Maybe it's a $50 per month membership community. Whatever it is, buy it today. Don't wait until you have extra money. You'll never have extra money. The money you have is the money you have. Reallocate it. Cancel another subscription if you need to. Skip a few dinners out. Find the money. Make the investment. This is the single most important action in the entire first month. Everything else is preparation for this moment. Do not skip this step. Days 11 through 14 are integration days. You've made an investment in yourself. Now you need to use it. If you bought a course, schedule time in your calendar to take it. If you bought a book, read 30 minutes per day. If you signed up for a community, introduce yourself and start engaging. The investment is worthless if you don't extract value from it. Treat this like a job, like a commitment, like something that matters, because it does. This is your future earning power you're building. Day 15 is your mid-month check-in. Pull out your expense journal. You've been tracking for 2 weeks. Add up everything you've spent in each quadrant. What percentage is in quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4? The goal by the end of 90 days is to have at least 30% in quadrant 4. Right now, you're probably at 5 or 10%. That's okay. You're building awareness. You're making progress. Week 3 starts with a challenge. Days 16 through 22 are your no quadrant 1 spending week. For 7 days, you will not spend a single dollar on depreciating consumption. No impulse purchases, no junk food, no random Amazon orders, no mindless spending. Only quadrants 2, 3, and 4. This will be hard. You'll want to break it. You'll justify exceptions. Don't. 7 days. Prove to yourself that you can control your spending. That money doesn't control you. You control it. Day 23. You're going to do something uncomfortable. You're going to tell someone about your financial goals. A friend, a family member, a colleague, someone you trust. Tell them what you're trying to do. Tell them you're investing in yourself. Tell them you're changing your relationship with money. Ask them to hold you accountable. This creates social pressure, which is powerful. When someone else knows what you're trying to do, you're more likely to follow through. You don't want to admit failure. Use that to your advantage. Days 24 through 30 are your final week of month 1. These are consolidation days. You're going to review everything you've learned. Look at your expense journal for the entire month. Look at your net worth from day 2. Calculate it again today. Even if it's only changed by a few $100s, it's changed. You're moving in the right direction. Look at the skill you're developing. How much progress have you made? 5% better? 10%? Any progress is progress. Celebrate it. Write down 3 wins from the month, even small wins. You canceled subscriptions. You made an investment in yourself. You tracked your spending. These are victories. Acknowledge them. Month 2 begins on day 31. This is where things get real. Month 1 was about awareness. Month 2 is about action. Aggressive, intentional, strategic action. On day 31, you're going to do a brutal budget review. Look at every recurring expense you have: rent, utilities, insurance, car payment, everything in quadrant 2. Ask yourself, can I reduce this without sacrificing what matters? Maybe you can't reduce rent immediately, but could you get a roommate? Could you move somewhere cheaper when your lease ends? Can you shop around for cheaper car insurance? Can you refinance your car loan at a lower rate? Can you switch to a cheaper cell phone plan? Spend 2 hours on this. Every dollar you save in quadrant 2 is a dollar you can deploy to quadrant 4. Be ruthless. Comfort is expensive. Day 32, you're going to increase your automated investment. Remember the automatic transfer you set up on day 3? Double it. If you were doing 50 per month, make it 100. If you were doing 100, make it 200. This will feel uncomfortable. Do it anyway. The discomfort means you're growing. You're stretching. This is where transformation happens. Not in the comfortable choices, but in the ones that make your stomach drop a little. Days 33 through 39 are your income focus week. Every day this week, you're going to do one thing to increase your income. Day 33, update your resume or LinkedIn profile. Day 34, reach out to a recruiter or apply to 3 jobs that pay more than you currently make. Day 35, schedule a meeting with your boss to discuss a raise or promotion. Day 36, send pitches to 3 potential freelance clients. Day 37, research ways to monetize a skill you have. Day 38, take one small action on a side business idea you've been sitting on. Day 39, have a coffee meeting with someone who makes more than you and ask them how they got there. 7 days, 7 actions. No excuses. Even if nothing comes from it immediately, you're building momentum. You're training yourself to think like someone who creates income, not someone who just receives it. Day 40 is evaluation day. How did the income focus week feel? Uncomfortable, probably. Maybe a few things went nowhere. Maybe one thing created a spark of opportunity. That's normal. Not every action creates immediate results, but every action creates data. You're learning what works and what doesn't. You're learning about yourself. What felt natural? What felt forced? Where did you see possibility? Use this information to guide your next actions. Days 41 through 45 are your networking sprint. You're going to meet 5 new people in 5 days. Not just meet, connect meaningfully. This could be coffee meetings. This could be attending a local meetup or industry event. This could be reaching out to people on LinkedIn and offering value. The goal is to expand your network intentionally. Every person you meet is a potential door to opportunity. A job, a client, a partnership, a referral, a mentor. Treat every conversation like it matters. Ask good questions. Listen more than you talk. Add value without asking for anything in return. Follow up after every conversation with a brief thank you message and one piece of value. An article they might find interesting. An introduction to someone in your network. A resource related to something they mentioned. This builds goodwill. This builds relationships. This builds wealth. Day 46. You're going to make your second significant investment in yourself. Look back at the skill you're developing. What's the next level? Maybe you took an introductory course in month 1. Now it's time for the advanced course. Or maybe it's time to hire a coach for one-on-one guidance. Or maybe it's time to attend a live event where you can meet others who are ahead of you on the path. Identify the investment. Calculate the cost. Find the money. Make it happen. This should feel even more uncomfortable than the first one. That means you're progressing. You're betting bigger on yourself. That's the goal. Days 47 through 60 are integration and execution. You've made investments. You've built awareness. You've taken action. Now it's time to execute consistently. Continue tracking your expenses daily. Continue the automated investments. Continue networking. Continue learning. This isn't a sprint. It's a practice. Show up every day. Some days you'll feel motivated. Some days you won't. Do the work anyway. Motivation is fleeting. Discipline is permanent. Month 3 is where everything comes together. This is acceleration. This is momentum. This is where the compound effect starts to become visible. You're not a beginner anymore. You've been doing this for 60 days. You've built habits. You've invested in yourself twice. You've tracked every expense. You've networked. You've learned. Now it's time to scale up. Day 61, you're going to do a full financial review. Calculate your net worth again. Compare it to day 2 and day 30. What's the trend? Even if it's only increased by a few hundred or $1,000, that's progress. Look at your income. Has it increased, even by a small amount? A freelance gig? A raise? A side project? Look at your expenses. What percentage is now in quadrant 4? If you've been following this plan, it should be 20 to 30%. If it's not, you're not being aggressive enough. Find more money to reallocate. Cancel more subscriptions. Cut more waste. Be ruthless. Days 62 through 68 are your skills showcase week. Whatever skill you've been developing for the last 2 months, it's time to demonstrate it. If you're learning a technical skill, build something, a project, a portfolio piece, something tangible that shows what you can now do. If you're learning communication or leadership, volunteer to lead a project at work. If you're learning sales, close a deal using your new frameworks. If you're learning design, create something for your portfolio. The point is to move from learning to doing, from theory to practice, from potential to proof. Document your work. Take screenshots. Write case studies. Build evidence that you've grown. This evidence becomes your leverage for higher income. Day 69 is pitch day. You're going to ask for something. A raise, a promotion, a new client, a speaking opportunity. Something that leverages the growth you've created over the last 68 days. Prepare for this. Write out your pitch. What value have you created? What results have you generated? What makes you more valuable now than you were 2 months ago? Practice this pitch out loud. Record yourself. Listen back. Refine it. Then deliver it to your boss, to a prospect, to whoever can say yes to the opportunity you want. The worst they can say is no, and no is just information. It tells you what to work on next. But yes changes everything. Days 70 through 75 are your relapse prevention week. Because here's what happens at this point for most people. They've been going hard for 10 weeks. They've made progress. They start to feel comfortable, and comfort is the enemy of growth. So this week, you're going to identify your relapse triggers. What situations make you want to go back to old spending habits? Stress, boredom, social pressure, exhaustion? Write down your top 3 triggers. Then write down a specific action plan for each one. When I feel stressed and want to impulse shop, I will instead go for a walk and call a friend. When I feel bored and want to order food delivery, I will instead cook something simple and listen to a podcast. When I feel social pressure to spend money I don't want to spend, I will suggest a free alternative or politely decline. Having a plan before the trigger hits is the difference between relapse and resilience. Day 76, you're going to do something generous. Something that costs money but creates goodwill. Maybe you take a junior colleague to lunch and offer mentorship. Maybe you donate to a cause that aligns with your values. Maybe you buy a thoughtful gift for someone who's helped you. Maybe you pay for a course for someone who can't afford it. The amount doesn't matter. The gesture does. This reinforces the abundance mindset. Money flows to you. Money flows through you. You're a conduit, not a dam. Generosity creates circulation, and circulation creates wealth. Days 77 through 83 are your future planning week. You've been in execution mode for 11 weeks. Now it's time to think 6 months out. Where do you want to be in 6 months? What income level? What skill level? What net worth? Write it down specifically, not vague hopes. Specific numbers. Then reverse engineer it. What would you need to do each month to hit those numbers? What investments would you need to make? What skills would you need to develop? What relationships would you need to build? Create a 6-month roadmap. This becomes your guide after the 90 days end. Day 84 is your third major investment day. By now you should have momentum. You've invested in yourself twice. You've seen returns. Maybe not massive returns, but returns. Proof that this works. Now it's time to bet even bigger. Find an investment that scares you. Not recklessly, but an investment that feels like a genuine stretch. Maybe it's a $5,000 mastermind. Maybe it's a $10,000 coaching program. Maybe it's quitting your job to go full-time on your business. Maybe it's buying equipment that will let you serve clients at a higher level. Whatever it is, it should feel too big. That feeling means you're playing at the right level. Make the investment. Find the money. Credit card if you have to, as long as you have a clear plan to pay it back through the returns this investment will generate. This is strategic debt. This is leverage. This is how wealth is built. Days 85 through 90 are your final sprint. This is the home stretch. You're going to do everything at maximum intensity. Track every expense. Execute on your skill development. Network aggressively. Pitch opportunities. Show up fully. These last 6 days are a test. Can you sustain this? Can you live at this level of intentionality? Because this isn't a 90-day program. This is a lifestyle. The 90 days are just training. You're learning how to operate at a higher level so that it becomes normal. So that investing in yourself feels natural. So that deploying money instead of hoarding it becomes your default. Day 90 is celebration and recommitment day. Calculate your net worth one final time. Compare it to day 1. What's the difference? I bet it's significant. Not just in dollars, but in trajectory. You're moving in a different direction now. You're on a different path. Look at your income. Has it increased? Most people who follow this plan see some income increase within 90 days. A new client, a raise, a side project, something. Look at your skill development. Are you measurably better at the skill you focused on? Can you do things now you couldn't do 90 days ago? Look at your network. Do you know more people? Better people? More connected people? All of this is progress. All of this is wealth, not just financial wealth. Life wealth. Now here's the critical part. You don't stop. The 90 days were just the beginning. You've built momentum. You've created habits. You've proven to yourself that this works. Now you scale it. You increase your automated investments again. You make another skill development investment. You network at a higher level. You pitch bigger opportunities. You keep going. Because the people who transform their lives don't do 90 days and stop. They do 90 days and realize they've just scratched the surface. They do 90 days and get addicted to growth. They do 90 days and can't imagine going back to the old way. Let me tell you what happens to most people after 90 days. One of two things. Either they've seen enough results that they're fully bought in and they continue with even more intensity, or they start to slip. They miss a few days of tracking expenses. They skip an investment because money feels tight. They stop networking because they're busy. And slowly, imperceptibly, they slide back toward the old patterns. This is normal. This is human. But it's also optional. You can choose differently. You can choose to keep going even when motivation fades. Especially when motivation fades, because that's when discipline matters most. Here's your relapse-proofing protocol. These are the specific actions you take when you feel yourself slipping. When you're tempted to go back to old habits. When you're scared to make an investment. When you want to hoard instead of deploy. First, go back and read your Day 90 reflection. Remind yourself how far you've come, how different your financial life is now compared to 3 months ago. Second, look at your net worth trend. It's going up. Not dramatically maybe, but consistently. That trend is precious. Don't break it. Third, call your accountability person. The person you told about your goals on day 23. Tell them you're struggling. Ask them to remind you why you started. Fourth, make one small investment immediately, even if it's just buying a $20 book. The act of investing breaks the hoarding pattern. It reminds your brain that you're still in growth mode. Fifth, track your expenses for 1 full day with obsessive detail. Every penny. This brings back awareness. Awareness breaks unconscious patterns. Let me give you some real-world scenarios you'll encounter and exactly how to handle them. Scenario 1, you're 3 weeks into the program. You've been tracking expenses and investing in yourself. Then your car breaks down. $1,500 in repairs. You panic. This feels like proof that you can't afford to invest in yourself, that you need that cushion, that you should have saved more. Here's what you do. Fix the car, obviously, but don't stop your investments. Don't pause your growth. If you need to, put the repair on a credit card and pay it off over 3 months. The compound returns from continuing to invest in yourself will more than cover the interest. This is the test. Emergencies happen. The question is, do you let emergencies derail your growth, or do you handle them and keep moving? Scenario 2. You're 6 weeks in. You've invested in a course and you're not seeing immediate results. You're learning, but your income hasn't increased yet. You start to doubt. Maybe this doesn't work. Maybe you wasted money. Here's what you do. Keep going. Most investments in yourself take 3 to 6 months to generate visible returns. The course you took in week 2 might not pay off until month 4, but when it does, it'll pay off big. The doubt is normal. It's your scarcity mindset trying to pull you back to safety. Acknowledge it. Thank it for trying to protect you, and ignore it. Keep investing. Keep learning. Trust the process. Scenario 3, you're 8 weeks in. A friend invites you to an expensive dinner. $150. Your old pattern would be to say yes without thinking because you don't want to seem cheap. Your new awareness makes you hesitate. This isn't a networking dinner. This isn't strategic. This is just expensive. But you also value the friendship. Here's what you do. Suggest an alternative. Hey, that restaurant is pricey. What if we do brunch instead? Or what if we cook together at my place? Most real friends will understand. If they push back, you have a decision to make. Is this relationship worth quadrant 1 spending? Sometimes it is. Relationships matter, but be intentional about it. Decide consciously. Don't just default to yes because it's uncomfortable to say no. Scenario 4, you're 12 weeks in. You've completed the 90 days. You've seen results. You've built momentum. Then you get a windfall, a tax refund, a bonus, $3,000. Your old self would have saved it or blown it on something fun. Your new self knows this is fuel. Here's what you do. Deploy it immediately. Put 1,000 into your investment account. Spend 1,000 on your next skill development. Spend 500 on networking, conferences, or relationship building. Spend 500 on something that improves your productivity or health. Deploy it all. Let it work for you. This is how wealth compounds. Windfalls aren't for saving, they're for accelerating. Now let's talk about the specific micro-challenges that will test you daily. These are small moments where you'll be tempted to fall back into scarcity thinking. I want you to be prepared for them. Micro-challenge 1. You're at a coffee shop. You order your usual $5 latte. Then you see a pastry you want, $3. Total cost, $8. Your scarcity brain says that's wasteful. Your abundance brain asks, is this strategic? If you're meeting someone for a business conversation, yes. $8 for a 2-hour meeting that might lead to a client is cheap. If you're just buying it because you're bored, no. That's quadrant 1. The challenge is to pause and ask the question before you act. Not to never spend money on coffee and pastries, but to spend it consciously. Micro challenge 2. You're scrolling social media and see an ad for something you want. A gadget, a piece of clothing, a tool, it's on sale. Limited time. Your impulse is to buy it immediately before you miss the deal. Pause. Ask yourself, which quadrant is this? If it's a tool that will help you work more efficiently or earn more money, maybe it's quadrant 4. If it's just something shiny that caught your attention, it's quadrant 1. Give yourself 24 hours before buying anything over $50 that you didn't plan to buy. Most impulse purchases lose their appeal after a day. If you still want it after 24 hours and you can justify it as quadrant 4, buy it. Otherwise, skip it. Micro challenge 3. You're at the grocery store. You see your favorite snack. It's not on your list. It's not necessary, but it's only $4. Your scarcity brain says it's just $4. Your abundance brain says $4 times 30 trips per year is $120. Is this how you want to spend $120 annually? On unconscious snacking? Or would you rather redirect that $120 into your education fund? The challenge isn't to never buy snacks. The challenge is to buy them intentionally. Put them on your list if they matter. Don't grab them mindlessly. Micro challenge 4. A subscription you canceled 3 months ago sends you an email. Come back, 50% off for 3 months. It's tempting. You did enjoy that service, but you also canceled it because it was quadrant 1. The challenge is to remember why you canceled it. The value it provided didn't justify the cost. Half price doesn't change that equation. It's still quadrant 1 at half price. Delete the email, move on. Don't let discounts seduce you into spending you've already decided against. Micro challenge 5. You're tired. You've had a long day. You don't want to cook. Food delivery is calling your name. $25 for dinner. Your old pattern was to order without thinking. Your new pattern is to pause and ask, is there a quadrant 4 version of this decision? Maybe you order delivery but use the meal as a working dinner. You take a call while eating. You review notes. You listen to an educational podcast. Now the meal serves double duty. Nourishment and growth. That's quadrant 4 thinking. Or maybe you don't order at all. You make something quick and use the money you saved to buy a book you've been wanting. Both options are better than unconscious ordering. These micro-challenges happen dozens of times per day. Each one is an opportunity to practice your new money operating system. Each one is a chance to choose growth over comfort. Each one compounds. Handle 10 micro-challenges well per day, and you've made 10 small deposits in your future. Handle them poorly, and you've made 10 withdrawals. Over a year, that's 3,650 decisions. The difference between someone who transforms and someone who stays stuck is how they handle these moments. Now let's address the biggest obstacle you'll face. It's not money. It's not time. It's not opportunity. It's you. Specifically, the voice in your head that will try to sabotage you at every turn. I call this voice the scarcity guardian. It's the part of you that's terrified of risk, that believes safety comes from holding tight, that thinks you're one bad decision away from disaster. This voice is loud, it's persistent, and it's completely convinced it's protecting you. But it's not. It's imprisoning you. The scarcity guardian will say things like, you can't afford that course. What if you waste the money? You should wait until you have more saved. That's too expensive. You're being irresponsible. What will people think? You're not ready yet. You need to research more. This isn't the right time. These thoughts feel true. They feel like wisdom. But they're not. They're fear disguised as prudence. And if you listen to them, you'll stay exactly where you are forever. Here's how you handle the scarcity guardian. First, recognize it. When you hear these thoughts, label them. That's my scarcity guardian. It's trying to keep me safe, but I don't need that kind of safety anymore. Second, thank it. I appreciate you trying to protect me, but I'm choosing growth over safety. Third, act anyway. Make the investment. Take the risk. Do the thing that scares you. The scarcity guardian gets quieter every time you act despite its protests. It learns that you're going to be okay. That growth doesn't kill you. That letting go of money actually brings more back. But it only learns through experience. You can't think your way out of scarcity. You have to act your way out. Let me share a practice that will help with this. It's called the fear inventory. Once a week, sit down with a journal. Write down every money-related fear you have. I'm afraid I'll run out of money. I'm afraid I'll make a bad investment. I'm afraid people will judge me. I'm afraid I'm not smart enough to build wealth. I'm afraid I'll fail. Get them all out on paper. Then, for each fear, write down the evidence for and against it. Be honest. Most of your fears have very little evidence supporting them. They're stories you've been telling yourself. Once you see that, their power diminishes. Do this every week for 90 days. By the end, your fears will have much less control over you. Here's another practice. The Abundance Journal. Every night before bed, write down 3 ways money flowed to you that day. Maybe you got paid. Maybe someone bought you coffee. Maybe you found $1 on the ground. Maybe you got a discount. Maybe someone offered you a valuable piece of advice for free. Train your brain to see abundance everywhere, because it is everywhere. But if you're not looking for it, you won't see it. This practice rewires your neural pathways. Over time, you start to see opportunities instead of obstacles. You start to see wealth instead of scarcity. And what you see, you create more of. Now let's talk about accountability structures, because willpower alone won't carry you through 90 days. You need systems. You need support. You need people who will call you out when you're slipping and celebrate with you when you're winning. Here's what that looks like practically. First, find an accountability partner. Someone who's also trying to transform their financial life. Someone who gets it. Check in with each other weekly. Share your wins. Share your struggles. Share your numbers. Ask each other hard questions. Did you make that investment you said you would? Did you track your expenses every day? Did you network this week? Be honest. Be supportive. Be challenging. This relationship is invaluable. Second, join a community of people who think about money the way you're learning to think about it. Maybe it's an online forum. Maybe it's a local meetup. Maybe it's a paid mastermind. Somewhere you're surrounded by people who are investing in themselves, taking risks, building wealth. Environment shapes behavior. If you're surrounded by people who hoard and complain about money, you'll do the same. If you're surrounded by people who deploy and create with money, you'll do that instead. Choose your environment carefully. Third, hire a coach if you can afford it, even for a few sessions. Someone who's already where you want to be financially. Someone who can see your blind spots. Someone who can push you harder than you'd push yourself. The ROI on good coaching is astronomical. I've seen people spend $2,000 on a coach and generate $20,000 in new income within 6 months. That's a 10x return. But even if the return isn't that dramatic, the accountability alone is worth it. When you've paid someone to help you, you show up differently. You take it more seriously. You execute more consistently. Let's talk about what success looks like at different income levels, because this program works whether you're making $30,000 or $300,000. The principles are the same. The scale is different. If you're making $30,000, your 90-day goal might be to increase your income to $35,000 and your net worth by $2,000. If you're making $100,000, your goal might be to increase to $120,000 and your net worth by $10,000. If you're making $300,000, your goal might be to create a new income stream worth $50,000 per year. The specifics don't matter. The direction does. Are you moving forward? Are you investing in yourself? Are you deploying capital instead of hoarding it? If yes, you're on the right path. Here's a day-by-day micro-challenge guide for the final 30 days of your 90-day transformation. Day 61. Send one cold outreach to someone you admire. Don't ask for anything, just offer value. Day 62. Spend 30 minutes researching your market value. What are people with your skills making? Are you underpaid? Day 63. Update one piece of content that showcases your expertise. A LinkedIn post, a portfolio piece, a blog article. Day 64. Have a conversation with someone who makes more than you. Ask them one question about how they got there. Day 65. Cancel one more subscription you don't need. Redirect that money to your investment account. Day 66. Read for 1 hour about a skill you want to develop next. Day 67. Attend a free webinar or workshop in your industry. Day 68. Reach out to 3 people in your network you haven't talked to in 6 months. Reestablish connection. Day 69. Practice your elevator pitch. Record yourself. Watch it back, refine it. Day 70. Buy 1 book that will help you grow. Read at least the first chapter today. Day 71. Post something valuable on social media. Share knowledge. Add value publicly. Day 72. Review your automated investments. Can you increase them by even $25 per month? Day 73. Do a closet audit. Donate clothes you don't wear. Clear physical clutter to clear mental clutter. Day 74. Cook a meal at home instead of ordering out. Use the money you saved to buy a small productivity tool. Day 75. Journal about your biggest financial fear. Write it out completely, then write out why it's probably not going to happen. Day 76. Send a thank you note to someone who's helped you in the last 90 days. Gratitude builds relationships. Day 77. Identify 1 recurring expense you could negotiate lower. Call and negotiate it today. Day 78. Spend 15 minutes visualizing your life 1 year from now if you keep investing in yourself at this rate. Day 79. Share your financial transformation journey with someone who needs to hear it. Your story might inspire their change. Day 80. Do nothing. Rest. Recovery is part of growth. Day 81. Review your skill development progress. What have you learned in the last 80 days? Write it down. Day 82. Identify your next skill to develop. What will you focus on in the next 90 days? Day 83. Research the investment you'll need to make to develop that skill. Courses, coaches, tools. Day 84. Make that investment. Don't wait. Momentum matters. Day 85. Set up a new automated investment or increase an existing one. Day 86. Have a difficult money conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe asking for a raise. Maybe discussing finances with a partner. Day 87. Clean up your financial accounts. Close accounts you don't use. Consolidate where it makes sense. Day 88. Calculate your average daily income. Divide your annual income by 365. Now ask, what could I do to increase that number by $10 per day? Day 89. Write down your top 3 financial goals for the next 6 months. Be specific. Numbers, dates, details. Day 90. Celebrate. Seriously, you've done 90 days of intentional financial transformation. Most people never do this. You're not most people anymore. Do something to mark the occasion. Not expensive, just meaningful. And then the next day, day 91, start again. Because this isn't a program. It's a practice. It's a lifestyle. It's who you are now. Let me tell you one final story. There's a man I know who spent the first 40 years of his life playing it safe. He worked a stable corporate job. He saved diligently. He drove a 10-year-old car. He lived in a small apartment. He never took risks. And he was miserable. Not broke, but miserable. Because he knew he was capable of more, but he was too afraid to go for it. Then one day he got laid off. It wasn't his fault. The company downsized. But it shattered his illusion of security. He realized that playing it safe had been the riskiest thing he could do. So he decided to change everything. He took his severance package, $40,000, and instead of stretching it out to survive, he invested it all in himself. He paid $20,000 for a year of business coaching. He spent $10,000 on courses and certifications. He spent $5,000 on a website and branding. He spent $5,000 on attending 3 major conferences. Within 6 months, he had built a consulting practice. Within a year, he was making $150,000. Within 3 years, he was making $400,000 and had built a team. He went from terrified and broke to confident and wealthy, not because he got lucky, but because he finally decided to invest in himself. When I asked him what changed, he said this: I spent 40 years trying to protect money. It never grew. I spent 3 years deploying money. It multiplied. I wish I'd figured that out 30 years earlier, but I'm grateful I figured it out at all. You don't have to wait 40 years. You don't have to wait until you get laid off or hit rock bottom or experience a crisis. You can decide right now, today, this moment, to stop protecting and start deploying, to stop hoarding and start circulating, to stop playing it safe and start betting on yourself. Money out, money in. You have to let it go to make it grow. That's not just a catchy phrase. It's a law of wealth. It's how every wealthy person you've ever heard of built their fortune. They didn't save their way there. They invested their way there. They spent money on things that returned more money. They took risks that had asymmetric upside. They bought assets, not liabilities. They paid for education, for mentorship, for tools, for leverage. They understood that money sitting still is money dying, and they refused to let their money die. You have that same choice every day, every transaction, every decision. You can spend in quadrant 1 and watch your money disappear. You can spend in quadrant 2 and watch it maintain. You can spend in quadrant 3 and watch it grow slowly. Or you can spend in quadrant 4 and watch it multiply rapidly. The choice is yours. But understand this, not choosing is a choice. Staying where you are is a choice, and it's the most expensive choice you can make. So here's my challenge to you. In the next 72 hours, make one investment in yourself. Something that scares you a little. Something that feels like too much. Something you've been putting off because you're waiting until you have extra money. Stop waiting. Extra never comes. Make the investment now. Stretch yourself. Feel the discomfort, and then watch what happens. I promise you, something will shift. Maybe not immediately, but soon. And when it does, you'll understand what I've been talking about this entire time. The transformation isn't about the money. The money is just the evidence. The transformation is about becoming the kind of person who invests instead of hoards, who grows instead of stagnates, who builds instead of protects. That person, that version of you is wealthy, not because of the number in their bank account, but because of how they think. And when you think like a wealthy person, you act like a wealthy person. And when you act like a wealthy person long enough, you become a wealthy person. It's inevitable. This is your moment. Not tomorrow. Not next month. Not when you feel ready. Now. Take the leap. Make the investment. Let the money go. And trust that it will come back multiplied. Because it will. Not because of magic. Not because of luck. But because of math. The math of circulation. The math of compound returns. The math of strategic deployment. The math always works. You just have to trust it long enough to see it. You've listened this far, which means you're ready. You're done with the scarcity trap. You're done with playing small. You're done with letting fear make your financial decisions. You're ready to step into abundance, to step into growth, to step into the life you've been imagining, but not claiming. So claim it, invest in it, become it. The money is just a tool. You are the asset. Invest in the asset. Everything else will follow. Money out, money in. Let it go. Watch it grow. Your new financial life starts now.